So, Marilyn, I know that um, after your husband passed away, there was something you did that you had mentioned to me the other day that I thought was just really amazing. Can you tell me what that is?
I sure will. I had the most amazing opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. on behalf of mesothelioma victims and their families. The purpose was to try and ban asbestos in the United States because it's everywhere. So I spent 3 days out there, and I was accompanied by a very special person in my life. And but together, I mean, it was an eye opener. So we did a lot of meetings and whatnot at this hotel. But one particular day, I think it was our second day, we were going to march up the hill to the Capitol. And they had asked everyone to provide a letter. Well, about their story. I did not have a letter. I had this little photo album full of pictures of Bill before surgery, long after surgery. So I just tucked that in my purse and away I went. There was no one else from Montana representing us, so I kind of hung out with Pennsylvania. And when they got to their senator's office, they all went inside and I sat out in the hallway. And after several minutes, this tall gentleman came out and introduced himself as a senator from Pennsylvania. And he said, "You're from Montana?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "I understand there's no representatives here for you today. I would like you to come into our room and tell your story." I said, "Gladly." And I handed him this album and I said, "I don't have a story or a letter, but this is my story. Please look at it." And I said, "We have 3 grown children and no grandchildren. And I'm afraid my husband, he missed out on the grandkids. And presently we have 5 grandkids." So anyway, this senator looked and looked and looked and he broke down in tears. So he's like 6'4". And after that, we continued our little march around there. And then that evening, um, there was a press conference. And when I got back to the hotel, I could hear my name being called over the loudspeaker to report to the concierge immediately. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? And when I got down there, the lady said, "Well, apparently you shook up the hill today." And I said, "I did." And the Pennsylvania senator had contacted them and said, "We want her as part of our press conference that evening." So, okay, I had never done a press conference. I did not know what I was in for. And I got in the room and they kind of prepped you, and there was all the big fuzzy microphones and reporters and media, and it was so overwhelming. And they said, the lady that was kind of helping me just said, "Just tell your story. Just tell your story." Which at times there was some comical parts to our story when we were going through radiation in Houston, and I kind of had the crowd laughing and crying at the same time. It was really, really wonderful. And then they had a big banquet, and the organization that put this on was MARF, MARF, Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation. And at the dinner, they had tables set up for 10, and at each table, there was a scientist. And we were allowed to ask him any questions we wanted. Now, remind you, this was in 2009. And I had a question. The speakers up to that point that night had been a lot of peritoneal mesothelioma patients and victims. My husband had pleural, which was of the lung. Peritoneal is in the abdomen. So, as a mother of 3 babies that grew up, I asked the scientist, I now am aware, and as is the world, talc is in baby powder. Asbestos was in talc. Is there a chance by mamas using baby powder on their little girls, because most of these people talking were females, could that have been a cause for their mesothelioma? And he said, "We're on to that right now. We are working on that." And lo and behold, several years later, they proved that positive.
Yep.
So that was really, really rewarding. Um, I learned a lot. The one thing that they'll never be able to ban asbestos more than 99%, or it can't be. There was 1% of that mineral that's in the veins of our earth that is plowed up and used in highway constructions, everything.
Mhm.
So it wasn't that successful, but it was sure a learning experience. I met so many people. I stayed in touch with a lot of those people until they were no longer on earth. And after that, I also continued with my friend that accompanied me to Washington and his firm to advocate. I
Yeah.
worked with Bill's surgeon one time. I went down for some lectures. We handed out brochures. We had business cards. I was available by phone, um, just to help people out there. And I did that for probably 3 years. And finally, we just kind of put that to rest. And now I have it all fresh in my mind and memory, and I am so happy and able to help anybody that I can with any questions.